If I will drive to meet you in the middle of the night, but if you forget or miss your plane, or if the plane blows up in the Black Hills and gears go up in smoke, and I become my mother, treading water as my dad goes down, an orphan in a creek of snakes, of gasoline and static, my eyes outdone, men plowing past in 18-wheelers, night chopped up in crystal syllables, road blasted to ecstasies of concrete, some resembling God, others you. Don't ask what I will choose. Now, that's not to you guys. You're not you. And I just wanted to kind of start with a sort of angry poem, just I don't know, maybe it was the drive here or something, but although it's not really appropriate because I'm totally delighted to be here, and that was such a generous introduction, and I'm just so thankful to Paul for this wonderful welcome, and to all of you who are in the workshop today. It was so fun, and I loved getting to hear some of your work, so thank you for having me. This next poem is called Expressway Song. So I'm from the suburbs outside of DC, so a lot of people, think that it's important to have a sense of place in their poems, but rather than really having a place that I come from, I have this thing they call a cloverleaf, of like 4 different highways. And it's kind of a non-place. There's not that much that's distinctive about it. So when I think of my rite of passage or my coming of age, it kind of happened in a car. So this poem is called Expressway Song. The expressway encircled me, and this was why I'd come, to love, believing in a love like work, knowing the true work is waking to pierce each morning with intent, and evening with a reverence, until the city surrenders, lifts its iron, and lets one in with the grace of a raising bridge. This was why I'd hung my hurts, the way dogs hang their heads out cars, grinning at oncoming air, as if all experience were fresh, despite the concrete evidence, the bitter dust that flies through fur from strips of planted juniper, behind which new construction lies next to the gutted corner stores. Why I left, knowing who I was, no more than I had at 17, driving the same piece of junk that hauled me up the turnpike then, low on oil and antifreeze, speeding through Chicago's sprawl as I had New Jersey's reeds, its boxcars and refineries, sucking in the building buzz. I drove until it looked like home, till all the houses were the same. Azaleas clumped around the decks, men in short sleeves tending them, and I pulled into a cul-de-sac to listen to the honeyed talk of a family by a man-made lake, watching oak fuzz fall like worms to water warmer than a womb. When it was dark and they were gone, I drove back the way I'd come, and exiting the tunnel where the expressway throws her hair in snakes over the stadium, and the architecture vies to be most dire and most angular, a voice fell through me like cold chrome. We come to love what turns to stone. So those expressways took me various places. Some I wanted to go, some I probably shouldn't have gone. I mentioned in that last poem the New Jersey Turnpike, and as you know, that leads to New York City, and I went to NYU. I spent several years there afterward. And I think something about New York, as I'm sure most of you have been there, I sort of always had this dual response to it of sort of exaltation and dread. So it's the sensory experience of New York that's so overwhelming. You can just fill you with joy and excitement, and then it eventually hits a limit and you just can't take it anymore. So I have one poem from each of those states of mind. We'll start with exaltation and then move to despair. Okay, so this is called Grand Street, and Grand Street is the main street that runs right through Chinatown in New York, and there's all of these markets there, all kinds of markets, and you can buy anything you want. And also, since so many families that live there are multi-generational, you see all types of people, which isn't really true in other parts of New York. Okay, Grand Street. Chinatown flashed like a brain in creation. Chrome frying cages, rotisseries for sale, fluorescent egg-glazed mung bean buns, silver scales brandishing smelts silver scales, trim business people in razored suits inspecting growths on bulbous vegetables, laborers stippled pale with drywall chalk darting out of the subway tunnels, and the tiny sages in oily rags hobbling through the alley villages, the light judged each integral to all. Okay, so now we're going to push over onto the, now this is once we're already overloaded with the senses. I think something about New York is that, at least for me, when I first got there, I just thought that everything about it was great. You know, not just the good stuff. I loved the grittiness, even the nastiness of it. It all just seemed kind of incredible to me. But then once you have your own place and you really have to deal with this in a different way, it becomes a little less romantic. So just a couple of place names. Houston is one of the main roads that runs through the Lower East Side. There's somebody here mentioned named Joe Kim, that's a neighbor. Pedro is the super. And then two other place names, Rivington and Christie, those are also both streets on the Lower East Side. This is called Lower East Side Inventory. The gong over Houston, which was the sun, has rung. Late news, a monsoon, children up to their necks in Bronxville. The View, Midtown's futurist harmonicas. Joe Kim's dad is dead next door. A cop takes notes on a Lilliputian pad. Another wheels him out in black plastic through halls insulting themselves with Ajax. Downstairs, hipsters spill up electric poles, chewing gum aggressively, and Pedro belts, "If I were a rich man, la-da-da-da-da, I'd get another hooker every night." Oh, gutter red sunset seeping into every crack of silhouette Manhattan like a tea bag steeping through the dark. Come down on Rivington, Christie, Roosevelt Park. Let me sleep. Okay, so as you can probably imagine, going in these different places, you end up with different people. And again, probably a couple I shouldn't have ended up with. So those people get one poem. This is called Meet Me in Hollywood. I let myself go and watch the signs arriving green in the violet glow Los Angeles put out over the freeway, through the boulevards and bad apartments, to that pink Best Western tangled in the hills, where he stood smoking by the windowsill. The hot day hung behind him like an outfit bought on debt. The little fuchsia exhalations of the bougainvillea, sexual and suicidal. We drove to Malibu, speeding through billboards, oil fields, mechanical beaks pecking the soil, till wildflowers sparked the cliffs and our wish for love mounted the coast like an infatuated angel, evening drowned with its appetite for alcohol and argument, while a mural of Clint Eastwood smirked over the motel pool. Late that night, someone walked gently in the room. then left as in a dream. And switching on the lamp, we found my purse was gone, a handyman trembling with it in the rhododendrons. He handed it back as if he'd expected to be caught, or we'd asked for something to be stolen. So eventually I ended up in Chicago, and I finally met the person I was supposed to meet. My husband, Chris, and I met at Poetry Magazine. As Paul mentioned, we both got there at a very exciting time. They'd gotten $100 million. So it had been this tiny magazine, and then it was suddenly this enormous media circus, and we happened to meet each other also at the same time. So it was pretty fantastic, and it was sort of a whirlwind. We met, we got married pretty soon after we met. And then, sadly, about 10 months after we were married, Chris was diagnosed with lymphoma. And it's a sort of strange kind of cancer. It was a long time before he showed symptoms. But after about 3 years, he did. And they have these miracle drugs that you hear about. And at the time, he got one, and it's called Rituxan. So what's important to know about this is that there's an epigraph to this poem, which is that the poem is called Rituxan Spring. And the epigraph is known as a chimeric antibody. Rituxan is a drug made of tissues from 2 different species. So this drug is made from a mouse enzyme and a human enzyme. And that combination heals the cells. So Chris got this drug, and it worked. So this poem is called Rituxan Spring. As derricks draw ink from parched... As derricks draw ink from parched plains, we've struck time, silky and game as a stick streaming snake row. This must be a dream. Spring singing slime through snail stones, membranous hollows, trembling tadpoles, fatigue greens, truffle caps fretted as girdles of whalebone, musk like the civets, resurrected in cologne. Love, let me kiss the rodent who died for this. So this is another short poem that kind of comes out of that time of the diagnosis. It's called In Order, and I think a thing with grief is that, or with any kind of chaotic experience in your life, poets, I think, who tend to be drawn to form in poetry are often drawn to it as a way of sort of containing uncontainable emotions. And this is actually about another grief that preceded it, which is the death of my grandfather, who was really my father. He was the one who raised me. This is called In Order. I've filled my lungs with fog. I have sobbed in certain familiar attics where each fond object had been hung or shoved away by hands whose roughness I had loved, and the carpet smelled of beloved dogs. Now that that grief's gone and others come, I come back again to understand the first one. Plum blossoms brushing the attic window as I look out upon a yard that has been left untended by any hand but that of God. So we have 2 daughters. This poem is called Of Beauties. They're twins. And this poem kind of takes off from a line from a Wallace Stevens poem. I don't know if you all might have read him in your classes, but he's a great modernist poet. But he has one very famous poem called Sunday Morning. And there's a line in this poem where he says, "Death is the mother of beauty." It's a line that people have quoted all over the place. I fervently disagree with this sentiment. I think it's a way of romanticizing something that shouldn't be romanticized, but also I think that the wrongness of that idea became more apparent to me as a mother, particularly because he uses the word mother in that phrase. So this is about my daughters being born. It's called Of Beauties for ENF, Eliza and Fiona. O child, out of the scorch of oil fields and cliffs of cotton felled to radiant tarnation, from coral, I feel like I should explain something here, I'm sorry. All of these places are sort of places that my husband or I have come from. So Texas, I'm from a military family, so there's some war images in here, and Chicago, where we lived for the last 10 years before coming here. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'll start over. Of Beauties. O child, out of the scorch of oil fields and cliffs of cotton felled to radiant tarnation, from coral foxholes splintering shrapnel to oriental jungles, through interstices of pain where God's green meets man's limestone, you come, little ones, as unknown to the heat-crazed grasses white obelisks stab at, as to undreamed rhyme streets parboiled with pit bulls. You come, through the commute's python inching to strangle the skyline's indigestible jewel, into the balcony's twinkle, the yawn of wharves, the channel between black galleries dwarfed by the L and vertical blue precipitous coves. You cartwheel to the core of the city of the year of innocence, where windows dwell on the silenced, stage-lit seance of angular furniture, and the hospital garage crooners recall every floor. You murmur rapture, life out of nothingness, mother of beauties, you come through me unto us twice. I think I said they're twins, they're 4.5 years old. And I think that when life gets a little bleak, I tend to live a little bit vicariously through them. They're 4.5, they have a lot of energy. Paul has seen them, he can attest it's kind of frightening sometimes. They can be quite wild. Oops. Hello. Okay, it's still working. So this is a poem in which I hope I capture some of their energy. It's called I'd Rather Go With You. I'd rather go with you and mince precisely through whipped cream worlds sugar-belled by kissy buds, down aisles brailed with frippery. Let's go galloping, Lieblings, with the nimbleness of minks across our circumstance of ice. And like old hippies skinny dipping up past the beaver dam where we honeymooned back when autumn hydrangeas greened, never speak of slipping. In the Chinatown of childhood, a 10-foot-tall deal dresser's 100 drawers wink open one by one on the miraculous. We'll make it there, my little livers, and when I do, I swear, I shan't be penurious. And penurious means cheap, so you get really cheap when you have children. I'm just going to read two more short poems. This is called New Haven. It's to Chris, and as you might imagine, moving from Chicago, who'd been there for 10 years and gone through a lot, moving all the way to New Haven was a big deal. It was pretty scary. But I love the name of the town, New Haven, and what that means. So this is in honor of that. New Haven. The fear admitted, lifted, and my dear, we did it differently. Beneath the rental's pulled chain lanterns, like faintly lit hornets' nests, the one at center, a planet of torn paper, the bed's metal middle foot supported by a motel Bible, as if there could never be enough roughness to devour, nor suffering too great for one replete with one, and all the nowheres known together.